Now, let's try to understand the different growth strategies associated with the firms. First thing, whenever we use the word growth, I really want to know whether the growth is coming purely from internal or external. Here I am not talking about financing of the growth, right? I am purely the financing, whether it is internal or external, leave it aside. But the growth itself, I am looking at the internal expansion versus the external expansion. What are the different ways in which I can grow internally? My existing operations, I can increase the size of them. Which means probably instead of working out of two plants and two branches, I may go for four plants, increasing the size of the operation. Then I can think of a horizontal expansion. Again, we are talking about, okay, the production is still the same. Here, my intention is instead of producing 1,000 units, I plan for producing 2,000 units. So that is the typical increase in the size of the operation. Whereas when I talk about horizontal expansion, we are talking about two things. The same product, either I expand it to the same market, which is more like I increase the sales of it. I increase my marketing campaign, which will increase the selling of the same product to the same market, or I can get into a totally new market. This is a geographical expansion that I can think of. Expand to new market, or I could even bring some kind of variety into the product. I can bring up lots of product differentiation, all these things, which mean either we are talking about new market or new product, and or even both of them, either product based or market based. Get into a new, either differentiate the product or come out with a altogether a new product, or look out for a new market. All this we call it as a horizontal expansion. So, if at all I have more and more of a same product or similar kind of a product, I can think of economies of scope, and I can target the different segments of a market. Probably if I am producing a soap, if I am manufacturing a soap, I can take one variant of the same soap, probably targeting towards women, modify it a little bit, alter the product a little bit, and try to position the same soap for a man. Try to come out with another small variant of the soap, probably try to come up with for the kids. Now the same variant with small modification here and there, I am trying to appeal to different sets and different segments of the customer. Probably again, if required, alter it a little bit more, and come out with another product which will target very old kind of people. And probably you target a product with again small level of modification to some kind of diseased people, people with some specific skin diseases. How can it act as a protection for skin diseases? Now you can think of different kinds of expansion. This is what we are calling as a horizontal expansion. Whereas on the other side, even the firms can grow vertically also. Vertical integration. Here we are talking about, okay, when the company is in stage X of the production, where it takes the raw materials, let's say from Y, and whatever the good it produces, it sells to Z. Now what the vertical integration says is, you try to set up your operations by by doing these operations of Y or by performing the operations of Z. So we are setting up of the operations of a different stage of the production process. So which means if I start producing, if I start getting into this business as well, or probably some other intermediate business, if I start doing that particular business also, or if I start doing this particular business also, wherever, okay, right now I am producing something. Whatever I am producing, it goes to the wholesaler. The wholesaler takes up to the retailer and retailer takes up to the customer. Now, what if I start the wholesaling process all myself rather than giving it to some external? In that case, the costs are getting optimized and I am able to expand much more. So that kind of an expansion is what we are, or probably there is a logistics. Instead of outsourcing the logistics, can I maintain the logistics myself? So all these things are contributing to the part of vertical integration. And in some cases, the expansion of a firm, the growth of a firm can come out completely through diversification, which is a combination of both horizontal and the vertical, or probably completely a new markets, no current product at all. I'm not looking at similar products, completely new products into a new market segment, which is more like a diversification kind of a situation. Now, firms can really get into any of these mechanisms for their expansion process. All these they themselves are doing, they are not outsourcing, they are not buying any other firms. They are setting the operations, either growing in the existing size or growing the same product to a different customer base altogether. And so which falls under the horizontal expansion. It can look at a vertical integration or overall a total diversification also. Whereas on the other side, some firms may really believe in external expansion, wherein they can target taking over some other firm or merging with some other firm, get into a joint venture where both the firms come together, form a third firm, and really operate with some sharing between both the firms. Let's say 51% by one firm, 49% investment by the other firm, both of them together forming a third firm, which is called as a joint venture. Or in some cases, it could be a strategic alliance. These two can form an alliance. Joint venture is one form of a strategic alliance. Two firms work together towards a strategic goal, but independently they are different. Here it's not about a third entity that is formed. Individually they both exist as it is, but for some task they come together and really execute that task, coming as a strategic alliance. Now, first thing we'll see vertical integration, wherein the either the firm is moving closer towards the suppliers. It is getting into some of the roles of the supplier, which earlier used to be done by someone else, or it could be going into performing the roles which where it is going closer towards its customers. So all these things are going as a part of the vertical integration. So only a production firm now taking care of distribution also is a vertical integration. Production firm now taking about the raw material supply, for producing its own raw materials also, not just the finished goods. Then it is going as a part of vertical integration. Now, if I try to understand, okay, as a business, I am talking about, let's say, a cloth manufacturer. Let's say till date, all the raw materials are got from external suppliers. The cloth is manufactured here, and this cloth is sold to some wholesaler who will take care of being a retailer and who will take it to the customer. Now, the company itself wants to get into a role of a wholesaler. directly. It wants to set up its own warehouses and stocking points from where the retail it is supplied to the different retail outlets. Or in some cases, the company itself wants to maintain a different retail outlets altogether. Now that is where we are calling it as a vertical integration. Now what all does the vertical integration bring up? Heavy efficiency is going to come up because economies of scale, production economies are going to come up because I am expanding more and more, right? I am taking care of the operations. So the costs of economies of scale is going to come up. Along with that, which means in terms of production, there is an economy that is coming up. I know depending on the demand, I'll do the production. So production economy is coming up. Coordination. Now, if these two are two different legal entities, then probably there are costs between both the parties, right? The buying cost, the selling cost, the marketing costs, because this party might very well buy this product or some other manufacturer's product. So there is a marketing cost, there is an advertising cost. But if these two are performed by the same, there is a coordination saving, coordination based economies that are coming up. Managerial economies of both these firms are under the same management now, so they can very well think of how the costs need to be allocated between these two, how the operations of these two need to be structured. So there is a managerial economy, and then there is even a financial economies also, because now when a firm is performing these two, the overall costs are going to be much lesser, and probably the firm is becoming much larger, which is resulting in generally the larger firms can raise capital more comfortably at lower cost compared to smaller firms. So economies and efficiencies are going to get generated across the production level, coordination, management, financial, and various aspects. And at the same time, there is a lot of uncertainty that is reduced in the process because there is a good control. Depending on whether it is moving more closer towards the suppliers or towards the consumer, the one or two layers in the production process, the control is getting improved. So there could be control on the suppliers or the retailers or the distributors, which will reduce the uncertainty, how much to produce, when to produce, what to produce. That level of uncertainty is drastically reduced by integrating vertically. And the communication improves because now these are not two different entities, it's only one single firm. So internal communication will play a very important role, and it will definitely enhance the growth of the firm. And now that the firm is becoming more bigger and bigger, there is a possibility that it can become a monopoly. So the monopoly, the pricing power, so it becomes more and more of price setter now. The overall costs are going down, the economies of scale are building up. But at the same time, if it also increases the price, the profitability is going up drastically. Because it need not pay for the warehouses or the wholesalers, because now it itself is handling that aspect, which means the pricing power is much better, and it can lead to overall profits of the company. And at the same time, because it's becoming so large, getting very heavy economies of scale, there is a good chance that virtually it can create so many barriers to entry for a new firm entering into the business. But at the same time, now all these are integrated, right? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, let's say the firm started performing all three of them. Now probably this is where the adaptability problem will come into picture. Now let's say probably in stage 3 there is a significant change in the way the business is getting performed. In the logistics, let's say there is a lot to do with the online platform selling. There is a lot to do with the online mechanism, and the company does not have that much of expertise with respect to the e-commerce and IT. Now, if it has to change to the market situation, this integrated situation will create lots and lots of hurdles because it becomes unable to change the supplier, whereas are unable to change the wholesaler. Whereas traditionally, if these have been disintegrated, I could have left S3 and I could have taken S4 as my partner for this new way of selling my product. So that is where some kind of problems come up, especially when the different business stages keep changing. In that case, probably an unintegrated piece would have been much more profitable than a vertically integrated piece. And at the same time, the risks that are gained by diversification, either I could have, instead of selecting one single customer or one single wholesaler, I would have diversified my risk by going with three of them. Whereas when I myself am taking up that kind of an operation, then my scope for diversification of my risk is going down drastically. So while there are so many benefits the firm can get by doing a vertical integration, it has to be really cautious of before any activity can be planned to the fullest. Then there is a scenario slightly better where the firm can execute what is called as a tapered vertical integration, where it is more like partial. Whenever we are using the word tapered, we are thinking of it as a partial vertical integration, means some portion of the input is produced by the firm, whereas some amount of raw material it still gets from outside. Some inputs internal, some inputs are got from external, which means the integration is not full, it's a partial integration. What is the advantage of it? Because it is producing some input itself, it knows what is the typical cost that it is incurring for that. Now, when it is trying to obtain some portion from external, it will have a better negotiation power, right? Because it knows internally what it costs, so it can very betterly negotiate with the suppliers, which means it is getting some kind of a control on the cost of the input. The suppliers, it can increase the bargaining power with respect to the suppliers. And at the same time, because it is producing only a proportion of it, the cost that is incurred for the company regarding the internal setup costs or investment that is required at the beginning or at the outset is much lesser. And at the same time, because there are two sources of input, one internal, one still giving to the external, there is some amount of diversification of the risk typically coming up. And but at the same time, okay, whatever are the economies of scale slightly will go down, because if it is really producing input completely internal, probably economies of scale are going to come up, efficiency gains are going to come up, but some kind of a compromise has to happen on that particular aspect. So that is what goes as a part of tapered vertical integration, slightly a different version of the complete vertical integration. Then the firms can really look at overall diversification, where they are looking at completely new products into new markets. Probably this is a strategy which is more for mitigation of the overall business risk, but it is purely based on what kind of technology is used, how well the management is able to adapt to various businesses, what are the market opportunities, which kind of businesses are favorable to get in at this particular point in time, what kind of skills and expertise does the management really possess in this space. Probably all these things play a very important role if they have to really get into a new business altogether. It's all as good as, like, okay, the company which has been very much an expert in entertainment industry, let's say they really want to run an airline business, they want to get into a starting of an airline business, or they want to start something like a banking business, wherein you see that These two may not be linked at all, or to some extent you may try to provide some kind of a linkage, but very much diversified kind of industries. So, or probably they want to get into any other industry where the linkage between them is much weaker. So this is where you see the diversification kind of strategies coming up, where the major intention of the company is the risk diversification, spreading of the risk. The industries are chosen in such a way that even if one industry fails, if the profits go down in one business, they should be compensated or offsets by the profits that are coming up in the other business. That is what we are talking about, a diversification scenario, right? So if at all any unpredictable changes in the market come up, one business goes down, it should be the case that it should not be the case that the other business which it has gotten also will go down. The other one should really provide as a hedge against the prices falling down, the value going down, the profits going down in one of the businesses. So the profitability keeps maintained because of this, and at the same time the company will get the opportunity to expand into the new businesses and new markets altogether. And that too, it's a very good strategy if the current business, the current market, the current product does not have much scope to grow. Expanding completely into a new market for new products is always a better strategy for the firm for the future growth prospects. Now, so all those things which I have discussed, whether it is through size expansion, horizontal expansion, or the vertical integration or diversification, all these are the possibilities for a firm to grow more and more internally. But there are different possibilities where the firm can grow externally without, which is more to do with mergers and acquisitions, which means it is not investing directly, it's not building the operations from the scratch. If you look at all those which we have discussed till now, whether it is vertical integration, the firm will set up all the wholesale operations itself, or the firm will become the raw materials provider all by itself, or diversification, the firm will start producing an entirely new product and try to sell it entirely into a new market. All the activities, the operations, whatever the task that we talked of, everything is developed by the firm right from the scratch. That is what is an internal expansion mechanism. But any firm, nowadays the most common mechanism is the firms are looking at an external growth through mergers and acquisitions. When we talk about mergers, two firms are combining their business operations. Just okay, A, B. They combine their business operation. Either they have a separate legal entity of their own, or they merge together forming a new legal entity altogether, right? So in this case, what typically happens is these two are combining together, which means no additional finance from the outside is really required. And it may so happen that the managers from this and managers from this, they are all retained and overall output is magnified. Whereas when I talk about an acquisition or a traditional takeover, right, this firm really tries to buy all the or good number of shares of this particular firm and takes the control of the same. And here, if it is done with the mutual agreement, let's say A wants to buy B, buy a significant stake in B, and if it is done with the consent from B, it's called as a friendly takeover. But even if B does not agree to the takeover, but if A buys a sufficient amount of stake from B or from B's shareholders, then it's treated as a hostile takeover. But in that case, A requires sufficient amount of finances. There are different models of funding for the same. So A has to raise capital to pay for all the shares of the B and acquire the significant stake in the target firm. And it may so happen that the entire management of B might be scrapped. All of them may be laid off because it may so happen that A feels that B is not that effective, and that's the reason A is taking over B. And this is where, again, how many such kind of mergers and acquisitions we see when the economy is in a very booming phase. Even these mergers could be high, the acquisitions could be high, the amounts that are traditionally paid to take over could be much higher, and this nowadays is a very increasing trend across the countries. Cross border mergers, acquisitions becoming some of the important aspects of the day. They are increasingly using the acquisitions and the mergers. The investment banks are really facilitating a great deal in terms of making these deals happen quite effectively between the various firms. So that's where, whenever we talk about mergers or acquisitions, just like the way internal growth is there, horizontal talks about same industry, competitors. When I talk about two competitors coming together, which is more like, okay, HP and Compaq coming together, or when I talk about Adidas and Reebok coming together, these are the scenarios of horizontal. Almost at the same stage of production, same similar kind of business, they come together. Their intentions could be different in each one. Then we can talk about vertical. Vertical merger is similar to vertical integration. Firms at different stages of the same production process. Probably the manufacturer, he might set up the wholesale unit, or manufacturer and the wholesaler team up together. Manufacturer and the raw material supplier, these two may still be different legal entities, but they may work together. So these are more and more of vertical mergers. And when I talk about conglomerate, it is two firms in entirely unrelated industries. The Sun Entertainment taking over SpiceJet, which is an airline service provider. Completely two different kinds of industries. They came together to, that comes as a conglomerate. That's more like a diversification when I'm looking at an internal expansion mechanism. So why do these kind of mergers, acquisitions really come up? Probably it's a quicker means of expansion. All of them believe in the formula that 1 plus 1 is not equal to 2. 1 plus 1 is much greater than 2. Which means there is a possibility of lots and lots of synergies operating in coming together. Either it could result in a sales growth, revenue growth, or reduction in the costs, which could result in overall increase in the profits. So a quicker means of expansion, I can move into a new geography, new business, new customer base quite quickly, and duplicates are removed. Both the teams having the sales teams, they are competing with each other. Now when they come together, probably the sales team of one could be scrapped and could be used for something else. So overall cost reduction happens. Duplicated functions are completely removed, especially relating to the marketing. I don't need two different salespersons, which was the case before merger. Two companies having two different salespersons in the same geography, trying to sell a similar product but of two different companies. But now those two different companies became one. So I need one person is sufficient. I don't need any kind of marketing tactics to make sure that one scores over the other. Same thing happens with various staff as well. So the merger becomes a motivation there. Similarly, it can increase the monopoly power. Earlier, okay, both of them had, let's say, 20% stake. So now, okay, 20% stake, and they are fighting for each other's shares. but now they become 40% stake, become more powerful, so it becomes more and more like a monopoly. So they are eliminating, reducing the competition quite drastically, which can again play an important role in pricing and which in turn can increase the profits of the company. And the combined firm, the market valuation is going to go up because even from a valuation standpoint, the future revenues are going to go up, future expenses are going to go down, which means the future profits are expected to go up with the synergies operating profitably between both the companies. Lots and lots of uncertainties and the rival actions are going down, right? Probably both of them are trying to eat each other's markets, coming up with predatory pricing mechanisms. Lots and lots of competitive scenarios are now going away, which means the uncertainties in terms of production, uncertainties in terms of marketing, distribution, sales, everything is coming down. And whatever the opportunities that are coming up as a and even the expertise is growing with both the firms having a different kinds of outlook. They can offer extraordinary expertise to take care of the opportunities. And now if A plus B becomes much bigger, the chances that it gets taken over becomes much lesser. And in some cases, right, merging with a white knight firm, someone who is like a helper, like probably let's say there is A and B. A wants to take over B forcibly. In that case, probably let's say there is a company C which is offering some kind of support to B, which allows B to exist independently. Now B doesn't mind going with C so that it can avoid the takeover from A. And in this case, C is more like a white knight. And in all these cases, so one more thing is asset stripping. I can sell off, I can take this asset off, I can sell off this particular business, and I can strip that business off and sell it off separately for a profit. And in some cases, there could be a motivation for empire building where managers are taking over the firm and they are trying to increase their power. And one major motivation comes in the form of geographic expansion where the mergers happen cross borders, which could, and probably in those countries where costs are much lesser. Every country today looks at India and China where costs are lesser, economic growths are higher. So some kind of mergers of foreign firms with the Indian firms can quite comfortably happen, which can increase the business opportunities in India. And in some cases, we can very well think of growth through various strategic alliances. Again, just like the way we are looking at mergers or internal expansion, even a strategic alliance can be horizontal and vertical. Probably if two airline companies come together, airline 1 and airline 2 come together to work on some kind of cost sharing platform, or probably two mobile service providers, they come together to share the same network. So whereas individually they are operating separately, but they are sharing the same network costs. In that case, we are talking of a strategic alliance horizontally. For a particular activity, the two companies are coming together. They are trying to cooperate with each other. Otherwise, they are rivals. Only for that particular activity, they have an internal alliance between them. At the same stage of production, they are coming together like this. Two mobile companies. Otherwise, they are rivals to each other. Only for as far as the sharing of a network is concerned, they have an agreement between them. So it could be a joint venture. They set up a joint ownership. A and B come together, in some cases form C, and a new independent firm is going to come up. This is called as a joint venture. Or there could be a franchising. Right? When there is a franchising, probably there are so many independent firms. They are linked with this parent firm. Each firm is independently acting, where it will pay a fee to this particular firm and it can directly use the products of this firm. Typically in the educational institutions scenario, you see one firm or probably a chain of Subway restaurants or Pizza Huts where the original management and there are various franchise, all the outlets are franchised out. Each outlet acts independently and you could see that each outlet pays a fee to the overall parent and it tries to use the products and the branding and everything associated with this parent. And in some cases, this horizontal alliance can come in the form of licensing. One single, especially in a software firm, probably there is a patented product, and this are probably in a pharmaceutical industry, some X is patenting for a particular product, but it has outsourced that work to Y. Means Y is given a license to produce the product of X as long as it is paying the licensing fee to X. After that, it is not having the right to do the production. So all these are strategic alliances where the firms are really existing separately, but for a particular activity they are teaming up together. Now there could be some growth that can happen through a vertical strategic alliance itself, wherein the agreements are primarily at the different stages of the same production process, just like a vertical merger. Especially the supply of inputs and outputs. There could be at the time where we are talking of a firm teaming up with the suppliers or firm teaming up with the producers for only some specific activities. So that is where we talk about the consortiums, right? Probably there could be a financial provider as a firm. There could be a builder, and at the same time there could be a marketing agency. All these three can come together to traditionally build a project, right? So they are three independent firms, but for this is where we are calling it as a consortium. Different firms are coming together for one specific project, and probably if required they can create a separate company. They can have a separate legal existence for undertaking that particular project. The same thing can go via an outsourcing or subcontracting kind of a mechanism, right? Stage one is outsourced, probably filtering of some records for analysis. Data management, data cleaning up could be done by one firm. The cleaned data is given to some other firm who will do the analysis of that particular data. This is a different stage of the cycle and different firms are working together in the different stages of cycle. That is what is again a vertical strategic alliance, or sometimes we are calling as outsourcing and subcontracting kind of mechanisms. Even the licensing can come out in the same manner. And we can talk about even networks where we are looking at a formal or informal alliance between the multiple firms across the multiple sectors where they try to use better technology, cheaper resources and new markets, try to reduce their overall costs and try to become more and more beneficial or profitable in the future. Now in all these strategic alliances, if I look at it with more care and caution, they are giving more access to the new markets, expertise, resources, different firms bringing in different expertise, different kinds of resources. Overall, the knowledge pool in the company growing, that advantage will definitely add up to the profitability of the company. And at the same time, the sharing of the risks, right? Because multiple consortium is working out in terms of one single project, a large project shared by a lot of players, which means the risk is spread across the different companies. And because it's now on a combined basis, it's a big firm, even a huge capital can very well be raised, which means if there are projects where heavy initial startup costs are there, funding them would become more and more comfortable, right? And it may not, here we are not, no firm is really acquiring the other. Each of them are working independently, but when they are acquiring or merging, probably there is a lot of other legal related costs and lot of accounting related consolidation. So many consolidation related costs are there. But without really merging or getting acquired, the same purpose is being achieved. So which means it is quicker and cheaper compared to a merger or a takeover. One's experience forms lessons to the other. Another advantage. And it is more and more appropriate where there are large sunk costs and uncertain transaction costs between the firm. They can come together, position in this particular manner to finally execute the realistic goals. So, and probably if they are separate, there is a very high chance of information asymmetry. One party knows more compared to the other. So, there is always a doubt in terms of the other party, negotiations, trust related issues. Lots and lots of problems come across the chain. So, the reduction in the chances of taking an opportunistic behavior on the others will actually come down. All of them will work together as a unit, and as a cohesive unit, the overall cost can be reduced drastically. So these are the different ways in which typically a firm can look out for growing. Either it can look out for internal growth, where majorly it can look at horizontal expansion, size expansion, or it can look at vertical integration or overall diversification. Then there could be a mechanism where there is an external through mergers or acquisitions, where there could be a horizontal merger, vertical merger, or a conglomerate merger. Then we can look at forming some kind of strategic alliances where there is no merger or acquisition. Even they can be worked out horizontal or vertical or some kind of a network base. So these are the different ways in which the companies can typically target towards growing and trying to increase their profitabilities in the long run. All right.